At some point in life, you have to ask yourself, are you willing to endure discomfort long enough to become who you're capable of being? If you're new here, welcome to the Growth Voyage podcast, the show where we explore the man's journey from approval seeking to self-led living and the messy middle of growth that comes with it. For a long time, I thought chasing success and chasing fulfillment were the same thing. But the more conversations I've had with men and the more I've reflected on my own life, the more I've realized they're often very different pursuits. So if you've ever questioned your ambition, felt guilty for wanting more, or wondered whether the sacrifices for growth are actually worth it, this episode is for you. Enjoy. Often when I think about struggle, the tendency, I think naturally for us as humans, is to avoid struggle or any type of discomfort. But in my experience anyway, some type of struggle or discomfort is unavoidable. So I think the question for me is rather, well, what type of struggle do I choose? I'm quite fortunate in my life at the moment where a lot of the challenges that I face are pretty much self-imposed. Like at any moment, if I decide, you know what, I've had enough of this, I can just take away my drive or my desire to do things. A lot of the resistance comes because I have these milestones that I like to achieve. And so I actually found that this perspective or this reminder is quite freeing sometimes. Like it enables me at least to kind of disconnect from the challenges in a way. Step outside of them for a bit, and a bit of a reminder that I am more than the challenges that present themselves to me. Like I could just give up if I wanted to. I could just think, you know what, that's enough for me. But again, that's not really an option for me. And so again, I think it's almost a blessing in a way that the current challenges I have in my life are, they're ones that I've chosen because of my ambitions. A lot of people might not necessarily have that luxury. And the challenging route for me has just always been like that hasn't really been an alternative for myself. And ever since I did an episode with Ibby Adam, I just love his quote that he came up with. And it was about how we all end up at the same destination at the end of this lifetime. So you can either take the easy route, the comfortable route, or the harder route, the more challenging route. And if you take the challenging route, you're likely to be more fulfilled and happier and a more wholesome person at the end of it. And I really resonate with that. And I know in terms of my life, when I reflect, even over the last couple of years or so, the points where I felt the most tension has been because there's been a bit of a niggling feeling that I could be doing more, that I could be pushing myself a bit more. And what I found was, it was actually from a physical standpoint that I love being at my limit. Like you can never really take that away from me. I don't care how tired I am. I don't care what I've been through or I've been put through physically. I've always got a little bit left in the tank for just that little bit more. And so recently, even now, I've started to push myself physically in terms of how much I can handle. So doing double training sessions, triple training sessions sometimes, whether it's the gym, then jiu-jitsu, then pro wrestling. I'm just seeing what I'm capable of doing. And I've noticed, even just pushing through that discomfort of a whole day, whether I've been going to the gym in the morning, then I've done a jiu-jitsu session at midday, and now I'm thinking, do I want to travel an hour up to pro wrestling, train for 2 hours, then an hour back? Do I really want to do that? I'm tired, I'm feeling a bit weak. But what I found is the more times that I just push myself to just go anyway and get it done, the more fuller I feel after it, the more kind of I feel the sense of accomplishment, shall we say. And I've often reflected on my main driver for doing this hard stuff. Like, what is it I'm actually doing this for? And I've had enough guests on the podcast now to know that, yes, this traditional kind of way of achieving success or this mode of thinking where if I reach X amount of money or if I get to this destination, then I will be happy. Like that's the common thread that you see, that a lot of guys I've interviewed certainly have lived, realized that that wasn't the answer. They've been on a beach in Mauritius, for example, or they've been in the most amazing place. They've got everything that on paper you should need, and yet they're still unhappy. And that I know on an intellectual standpoint, right? I'm aware that that isn't the answer. However, could I say that I've actually lived that yet? And the answer is no. Like in my body, I can't relate to that feeling because I haven't experienced this sense of, I've achieved everything I've wanted to. Now what? And I feel like that would be a natural kind of course of life, if you will, where, okay, if you do go on to achieve these things and realize that's not the answer, that leads you to the next stage of your spiritual journey, shall we say. But before that point, or at least when I've thought about my own journey, when I hear all this stuff, I was sometimes thinking, well, maybe I just go straight to that end point then. Maybe I just live this life where, hey, maybe nothing really matters, or maybe I can maybe I can just, lead a very peaceful life and, maybe not have such as big of a drive, maybe, if that isn't the answer. Maybe I don't need this big drive to accomplish things. But I think it's from that place where you've got a point to prove, where you're hungry. I think that's where a lot of great things can come out of. And certainly when I look at my own journey, you can tell me all this stuff intellectually, but I need to experience it for myself. I need to achieve these things to then know it's not the answer. Now look, a lot of these men, when they talk about their transformation stories, the answer then becomes, right, slowing down a bit more, starting to incorporate a lot of practices and being more intentional with their living. And I'm very fortunate in the sense that, like a lot of these tools, a lot of these ways of seeing the world and understanding the world, they're very advantageous. And there's a lot of tools that I can certainly use to, better my way I approach life, perhaps my sense of fulfillment in this current state or this current season of life. So there's certainly elements that I can learn from their stories and tools that I can implement. At the same time, that drive isn't going anywhere. I'm still young. I've still got things I like to accomplish. And this ties in with the theme of today's episode. Like there's this real strong drive to figure out what my potential actually is. Like what am I capable of doing, of becoming? Like who could I become? That is such a big driver for me because I feel it. There is such a range of possibilities of what I can do on this planet, of what I can achieve. And the same goes for you as well. It sounds cliche, but it's so true. The only limitations you have are self-imposed. And so the driving force for me isn't because I'm going to achieve a desired feeling. That's often the illusion, right, that we see. If I achieve X, I will feel happy, right? Once I get this thing, etc. For me, I don't want to achieve because I want to feel happy. I've achieved certain milestones in my life and I know I get a wicked high, perhaps the day of it happening, maybe for a couple of days after, but then straight away I'm wanting more. Right? There's a couple recent examples I can think of. Recently, a couple months ago now, I competed in a jiu-jitsu tournament. It went very well. It was a great personal achievement of mine. I entered 4 competitions, won gold in each of them. I set that intention and I was so hungry for that to happen, and it did. And it was a very proud moment of mine. And at the same time, the same thought crossed my mind. Like I wanted straight after, and I got all the 4 gold medals around my neck, I wanted to go again. I just wanted to keep on sparring. And then an opponent from my past popped into my mind who actually beat me in the final of a different tournament, the competition before. And then I said to myself, right, he's next. I've got to beat him now, because it's like a personal rivalry, if you know what I mean. Like there's a bit of competition there. And that was the first thing on my mind. The same thing happened when I had a pro wrestling match recently, it felt like a full circle moment for me, because 4 years ago, I was at El Dorado Music Festival in Herefordshire, and I remember having this vision take place in my mind, and I was thinking, wow, how cool would it be? What if you could come up with some type of scenario where you have techno music, kind of like the rave scene that I was really into at the time, and I had this fascination by it, and pro wrestling. Like, what if you could combine the two into one event? And so the vision was formed there. I kind of let it go. And 4 years later, that vision came to life. I actually wrestled at a rave in the UK. It was a full circle moment. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. And so I felt that sense of, this is great. At the same time, it felt a bit like a drug. I wanted more of it. As soon as I finished my match, I was like, right, getting high fives from the guys and really enjoyed it. But as soon as the other guys were out, I was like, I want to go again. I want more of that. It was a high. It was a high. And again, I wasn't there. I experienced that. I already knew, like, okay, it doesn't make me happy. It gives me a high, but then I want more. It's like feeding that system in a way. So I already know full well firsthand, to an extent, that achievement doesn't equal lasting happiness. At the same time, why am I doing it? Why am I competing? Why am I pro wrestling? Why am I building stuff? And at the core of it, I just need to achieve for achievement's sake, in a way. I want to achieve things so that I can continue achieving things. I want to conquer. I want to fulfill that potential. Like, what am I capable of doing? I think that's pretty much it. When I interviewed Ivor Stratford, for example, he did the Marathon des Sables, 270 kilometers approximately in the Sahara Desert. And he reached a point in his life where he was, unfulfilled. Depressive symptoms, very unhappy with his life, because he knew deep down he was capable of more. And he went and ran the Marathon des Sables. Now, this isn't to say you have to run the Marathon des Sables straight away, but you can start thinking about ways where you can, test that. Like, how far can you actually push yourself physically or in any other area of your life? It's no longer about, I need achievements so I can feel enough. I think a deeper reason for me, certainly, as I've reflected on this, is that I need to prove to my younger self that I can do it. Just me and him. Yeah, the kid who was bullied all the time, picked on all the time, had very low confidence, self-esteem. Like, I'm doing that for him. I need to prove to him that it's possible. I'm taking him for the whole journey. He's my real motivation. And yes, there are these kind of wider ambitions of helping men, inspiring men. At the same time, I think the best way I can do that is first proving to myself, proving to my younger Harrison that I can, in fact, do it. That is the main driving force. That is the relationship with myself that I'm cultivating, or that I've cultivated. It's like, right, you and me, we come into this world together and we're leaving it together. And I think reconnecting to that side of me has been pretty special in a number of ways. So sometimes it could even be a conversation with yourself and your motivations. What point do you have to prove? Not to others, not to society, but to yourself. And sometimes, even if it is to prove a point to other people, I think sometimes that's where some of life's best creations can be formed. When we have some of these darker energies, we need to prove a point to somebody. Yes, we can hear stories about, love and light and doing things for you. But again, if that is your driving force at the moment, I believe it's important to honor the season of life that you're in and let whatever unfolds from that naturally unfold. This has been a big lesson for me, kind of honoring the season that I'm in. Yes, I've got this vision, I've got this archetype of who I want to become in the future and all the great things that come with that. But as I'm working towards that, I've got to be honest with myself sometimes and say, all right, cool, we're working there, but we're not quite there yet. We're focusing on this area of our life, or we're in our building season. And sometimes that is going to come with sacrifices. And I think with any type of goal or milestone that we want to achieve, we have to be prepared to sacrifice things. This isn't something that consciously entered my awareness for quite a while. It just kind of happened where I couldn't be the version of myself that perhaps people expected out of me. And naturally, I've lost plenty of friendships. I've had a number of close people in my life, perhaps disillusioned with the way that I'm living. And sometimes I think it can be helpful if there's someone that you value to listen to what they have to say. Although ultimately what I found is that a lot of people aren't going to understand your way of doing things, right? When you're ambitious, when you're a man who's got a lot of lofty goals, ambitions, milestones, there has to be an element of delusion there and your way of doing things. And that often is not going to fit in conventional society. And a lot of the time it might be out of love, but people might be telling you, oh, have you thought about doing things this way? Or maybe you're pushing yourself too hard. You're being unrealistic. You're moving too fast. You're doing too much. But this is where we have to be really careful not to let someone else's perception of us dictate our actions. We've got to be very strong and protect our way of doing things. Because as you grow, as you push your limits, you're going to be met with your own limiting beliefs, your self-imposed limits. And so this is where if you're not careful about the noise that you let in from your environment, people around you, it can be very easy to let this noise knock you off course. And so again, what really helped me during this period where I had a lot of people doubting my path and my way of doing things, what really helped was, getting the brothers together, getting people who I was aligned with, right? People who were perhaps where I wanted to be in the future, maybe just call them up. And sometimes when I have been a bit vulnerable and I've said, hey, look, I'm not really sure about this anymore. It's quite noisy in my head, or just asking for advice. Right? I cannot overemphasize this enough. In this period, letting people in, telling people that you need a hand with something, being careful about what you consume online, anything in your field, everything that we consume has to be related to the path where we're going. It's a constant battle in today's day and age. We're constantly thrown all sorts of stuff in the algorithm and just noise, lots and lots of noise. And so I think we owe it to ourselves to be very protective of what we're letting in. Absolutely everything. And a big one for me during this period has just been holding every thought captive. Just questioning it. Is that mine? Being curious. Not necessarily pushing it away, but just sitting with it and thinking, is this from me? Is this from somewhere else? Like, where is this? And time again, I've realized just how much noise there actually is on this path. Again, with all this striving, with our vision, absolutely, I think sometimes, at least I've experienced this, where I've set a big goal for myself, for example. And when we get very entrenched in the whole grinding process, we can sometimes get lost there. So again, this isn't to say I'm not a big advocate for listening to our body, reflection, having a sense of balance, or looking to bring ourselves nearer to balance when things go a bit out of whack. It's still incorporating these practices. It's just being mindful of where we're getting a lot of this advice from and where we're perhaps being knocked off course from our vision. And there's a price to pay with this ambition, right? Or with high achievers generally. And I can only speak from my own experience where, when I produce a piece of art, let's say it's a podcast episode, or whether it is indeed pro wrestling, often I can be my own biggest critic, right? So as soon as I finish a podcast episode, this is what's happened, most of the time. I'll record the podcast episode. I'll be like, cool, enjoyed it, enjoyed the energy of the guest. But then as soon as I leave the studio and I'm maybe driving off, or I maybe go for a walk or whatever it may be, I'll get a lot of thoughts popping up about what I could have done better. Every single episode that I've had, at some point I thought, I could have done this differently, or I could have tweaked this. And at first I kind of resented this voice. I thought, whose voice even is this? And it was almost like, I just wish I could appreciate my art a bit more, or I could just be happy or fulfilled with something. But I've kind of reframed it a bit. And this isn't to say there's plenty of space for self-compassion. It's certainly something that I've been working on, which is, I think, super important for this high achieving mindset. But now I've started to honor that critical voice and say, do you know what? Thank you. Thank you for this. What a blessing it is to always have these insights about what could be better. Because I think, that's how we improve, right? It's by noticing these things and increasing our standard. And if we have ambitions for becoming the best at something or improving in something, that is kind of the path to get there. We're going to have to be exposed to, improvements, what we could have done differently. I think that's just the nature of what it is. And so, yes, while perfectionism has held me back in the past from putting out content, at the same time, I believe in the long run, that attention to smaller details is something that I've been really grateful for, because I can only see how I'm going to continue to improve by constantly looking for things to improve. This isn't to say I'm worthless because I failed or anything like that. It's more of an invitation of how can I improve? And I believe that is the mindset for self-mastery. And again, it comes back to why we're doing this stuff. Yes, we want to enjoy the process and honor the season that we're in. Ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, we're not doing this necessarily, or I'm not doing it to achieve a certain state. I'm doing it because I want to fulfill my potential. And so if the pursuit of my potential involves some pointers, shall we say, then they're welcome. And I believe that is going to be a big part of the process, right? In terms of becoming great at something. And greatness for me is built in very tiny margins. And so even though to a casual viewer of a podcast, if we use that example, or a casual viewer of wrestling, they might not notice this stuff. It is the type of stuff that will create a difference over the long run, in my opinion. And I think as you pursue something, as you learn skills and you spend more time invested in it, the improvements are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and your expectations are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I can only think of the gym, for example. I've been gymming for over a decade easily. And so every time I go to the gym now, you can imagine if we're talking about progressive overload, right? So the way you build muscle or the way you get stronger is by lifting at a heavier intensity than last time, right? So very often it will be increasing the weight, it will be increasing the reps, maybe it will be increasing the time under stress, whatever it may be. And I found now, whenever I'm in the gym, especially if it's something like a leg day, for example, the margins are so small. I'm looking at my list, right? My list of weights that I've got to hit for each exercise. And my aim is to get heavier than last time, or more reps than last time, or more time on the eccentric than last time. And I'm looking at my list, I'm thinking, man, like this is not going to be easy. And very often it is squeezing out just one extra rep, or maybe it's 2.5 kilos heavier than last time. And it's such a small difference. But at the same time, even though the margins are so small, I believe my satisfaction gets bigger over time because the challenge increases and I'm working as hard, if not harder, than last time. And so again, I think it's about honoring the season of life that you're at, or even the season in whatever pursuit you're pursuing. If you've got a decade of experience under your belt, you're going to have high expectations. So honor that. Thank it. Be appreciative of these high expectations because that's how you're going to continue to excel. If you've just started at the gym, then this is also a great time because your expectations are going to be lower. And if you are consistent, you will make solid progress. And if you know what you're doing. Yeah, you might not have the results of someone who has trained for 2, 5, 10 years, but that will come. So every season has advantages and there's no point pretending that we're at a different stage. At the same time, I think that's a fantastic way to ensure that you're pushing yourself and that you are uncomfortable. I think a great way to do that is to be a beginner again. And I think a lot of the time our ego can get in the way of us doing something, even with pro wrestling, right? Like even now, when I'm training in the advanced classes, sometimes I'm looking around and I'm thinking, well, I'm the least experienced here. And I know that's exactly where I need to be. Because if I was most experienced in the class, sure, I'm still going to learn something from my teachers, but how much am I going to learn from the other guys around me? Probably not as much as if I'm training with some of the best around. And so when I get that feeling of like, oh, imposter syndrome, or do I belong here? That's when I know I'm in the right place. I'm pushing my level of comfort. So I think a big part of this process is learning or being humble enough to be a beginner again. And I noticed the impact this has on confidence as well. Tommy Tanner, who we had in the podcast recently, you know, he can walk into a room now and he feels confident there. He feels like he belongs there. And that's because he's built up the skills over time in that endeavor. And I feel a similar sense of that with jiu-jitsu, because I feel confident in the sport. After training for coming up to 3 years almost, 2.5 to 3 years, I feel like I've reached a level where I've got pretty solid foundations in place, and I'm getting very good rolls in, and I've enjoyed my experience so far in terms of training and competition, and I continue to show up regularly. So I'm seeing the rewards for that, and that has motivated me to continue pro wrestling, even though I know there are so many different levels to that game. I've seen the progress I've made in jiu-jitsu, notwithstanding there's so much more of that journey to go. But I've seen the progress that I've made by showing up consistently and trusting and having a great team around me. And so that experience has motivated me to turn up to wrestling even when I'm tired, because I just know over time it compounds. And so if we can cultivate, again, this discomfort, chasing the discomfort, that will have a ripple effect in the rest of our lives as well. And again, when you look at the difference between being good at something and being great at something, all you have to do is look at elite athletes. For example, look at Harry Kane, Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. This is just football, for example. You can apply it to basketball players, Super Bowl, I don't know, whatever your forte is. Think of the best person in that endeavor. And now compare it to somebody else who, they're still at a reasonably high level, but they're not like the greatest. So there might be a squad player or, someone who's just like a solid player. Now, you take two of these guys. Let's say the solid player makes a mistake during the game. It's probably forgotten about pretty quickly. It might not even be noticed at first, but it's going to be forgotten about pretty quickly. Now, imagine if the best, let's say it's Cristiano Ronaldo, let's take him as an example. Let's say he missed a penalty, or let's say he made a huge mistake in the World Cup, as an example. Everyone is going to know about it. Everyone will see it. Everyone will notice it. And that's how you know that you're great, because it's so rare that you make a mistake. All the eyes are on you. Their standard is going to be so high. The best performers are constantly refining. They're constantly at their edge. I'm not saying it will make you happier in the short term. I'm not saying it's going to be comfortable at all. But if your deepest drive, like myself, is to pursue your potential, find out what your potential really is, what you're truly capable of, this is the mindset that you've got to embody. Every week in my men's circle, we finish off with a gratitude practice. We list things that we're grateful for. And every week, the same one comes up for me. And it's the ability to move my body. As long as I'm healthy and I can move around and I can pursue my athletic potential, I am blessed. And I think the same approach can apply to all the different facets of our life. We have the ability to pursue anything, whether that's with our physical body, our muscles, our athleticism, our mind. How far can we stretch it? Our ability to lead, whatever it may be. What are you capable of? Because chances are, if you're listening to this episode, you don't want to sleepwalk through life. You're not like everybody else. You're meant for something different. You've got a deep hunger within you, a deeper knowing that you're meant for more. So I'll leave you with a final reflection. If you reached the end of your life and never found out what you were truly capable of, how would that feel? Would you be okay with that? What is it that you truly want out of this life? What does it truly take to achieve your potential? And if you already know the answer, what's stopping you from taking that next step? And what's your relationship like with that voice that always wants more? Is it something you've been fighting against, or could it actually be one of your greatest strengths? That's all for this one. I appreciate you tuning in. If you found value in this one, please support the channel by subscribing and leaving a review. Would love to hear what you took away from this one. In the meantime, take it easy and I'll see you next time.